Okay, hey, what's up, guys? It's Jamie. It is October 25th, Tuesday, 2022. Um, I wanted to just talk about a video I watched the other day. I'm always trying to send my sons or younger guys and gals, some interesting piece of information. It could be on YouTube, it could be a podcast, an article I read, and I will either link it or post it or group chat it to some friends and family members if I think they'll receive it. They might open-minded to it. Now, my sons, I don't know if they actually watch it, but I just keep throwing the seeds. Just hey, I thought this was pretty good information. But I saw this article. There was this video from a few months ago. His name was Todd Mathis, I believe. He is a tax attorney for wealthy people, and he has a YouTube channel. And I've never watched him before, but I thought that the content he offered in this video was pretty good. I thought he had some good information, and he had this regular guy approach, which I really appreciated. So I'm probably going to share it. I'm going to link it below. And the main thing that caught my attention is because the subject of the video was 3 things to guarantee that, or something like that, that you're going to guarantee a passive income empire, something to that regard. And I might have it perfect, but it was something to that regard where I could just grab my attention. I said, let me see what he's talking about. And one thing's for sure, I am a big believer in now, these days, these past few years, in setting up revenue streams. And he kind of gets into that, and I thought it was really interesting in how he breaks it down. Now, I'm not going to do that here. If you want to watch the video of Todd's, check it out. It's not that long. But one thing that I will promote is that whenever you go to work, right, whatever you're doing, whether you're a construction guy, whether you're a retail sales type of person of some type, you work in the food or hospitality industry, whether you work at an airline, right, you're a pilot of a plane or a stewardess, or work inside the airport. I mean, whatever you're doing, it doesn't. You're a teacher, you're an educator. We have an earned income, whether you make 20 grand, 200,000, or 2 million, or whatever that number might be for you, like whether it's you yourself or family income or household income. So you're going to pay your taxes, and we're left with a certain amount of money after that. So what Todd talks about, and what I've heard Grant Cardone talk about, and many other people that are successful, very successful, or deal with successful people, and I will remind you that if you want to be a kung fu master or a kung fu, I say kung fu, but like if you wanted to be an MMA fighter or get into kickboxing, you would go to school, or you would join a class, or have an apprenticeship like Mr. Miyagi taught Danielson in The Karate Kid. And you may not like all the techniques and the things you have to do, wax on, wax off, paint the fence, but this is to train you to have a natural response, an instinctive response to somebody attacking you. Yeah, right. I am not a karate expert, by the way. You can tell, right? But I think as you get your paychecks, right? Paycheck, you get a paycheck, you get a paycheck. If you're getting earned income, now you could work for yourself, you could work for a company, right? And whatever your paycheck looks like, however you pay yourself, it's the same premise that regardless of how you trade your time, if you're trading your time for a paycheck, whatever that paycheck looks like, you're going to most likely pay taxes, and then you're going to be left with a net sum. And that net sum is going to get dispersed to pay what's left over after taxes, whatever your expenses are. Car payment, cell phone, utilities, rent or mortgage if you have one. What else? Putting gas in your car insurance, things like that. And some of these debts that we take on, which are like credit card debts, or I don't know, credit cards is a big one, or maybe my son wants to buy a motorcycle, my oldest son. I can't stop him. He's 21. I'm not a big supporter of, if you have a motorcycle, I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying that it's very concerning for me, for my kids, because we lost a family member in a bad motorcycle accident. Somebody ran a stop sign, and he got run over, killed him. So we have some fears when it comes to motorcycles. But he wants to invest in a motorcycle, and the helmet and the gloves. So for his birthday, he had a big wish list of all these things that go with a motorcycle. And there's an expense, and I just was mentioning that he has a budget. The young man has a budget that he set, and he only had a certain small amount left over currently. And I said, well, if you're only going to have this much left, you're going to buy a motorcycle? He's like, well, Dad, I can afford the monthly payment. I can afford it. And I go, just because you can afford it doesn't mean that you should. So I'm not trying to discourage him, but I at least want to get him to think about some of these expenses that we incur, because then it becomes a regular habit. It becomes like a thing that you start doing your whole life, where you're like, I can afford it. I can afford it. I can afford buying those sneakers, or the watch, or the expensive car. I remember one time having a car payment for $750, and for me that was the biggest car payment I've ever had, and I could afford it, but it was another liability, another expense that I added to the household. And when I say I could afford it, it didn't mean that I had a surplus of money. I didn't have much savings. I just could afford it based on the income that I had coming in at the time, where I was like, I could afford the $750. And I could afford the other $500, and I could afford the mortgage I have, and I could afford the credit card debt, and I could afford and it just keeps piling up. And I told him it's like having a backpack, and somebody drops a 2 or 5 pounder little, some weight in the backpack, and it gets heavy, especially if you're trying to go upstairs. So all these debts that we're putting on ourselves, sometimes you don't feel light. You feel like, the weight of the world on the back, on your shoulders, so to speak. So the thing that Todd talked about that I thought was kind of cool is he says, he uses a 70-30 rule, and that's the 70-30 is of the 100% that you're left over after paying taxes and stuff, right? And I think Cardone talked about a 40-40, like 40% taxes, 40% you pay yourself, like meaning you don't touch that money, it just goes into savings and stuff, that type of thing. And then the other 20% you live off of. So I kind of like that approach. And Todd's saying 70% of what you have left over you live off of, and the other 30% is what you save. I mean, whatever that separation of, or the allocation or division of percentages that you want to say, okay, I got this much left. What am I doing with it? If you're into stocks like me, like, of one of the revenue streams that the guy talked about, and a lot of people talk about, it's dividends and stocks, right? He was saying that there's short-term gains and long-term gains, which I believe. Long-term gains meaning I buy a share of Tesla for $200, and I look at see what it's worth in 10 years. Did it split a few times more? Does it go up to $4,000 a share? I don't know. So that's over a long-term gain. Short-term gain is I have 100 shares of Tesla. I'm just using Tesla. It doesn't have to be Tesla. It could be whatever company you want, Coca-Cola, whatever it is. And you might get dividends where the company pays you a certain percentage each year as a shareholder. So there's a little bit of money that trickles into your account, and there's some tax gains depending on how much you make, which I agree. I mean, obviously he's a tax attorney. And then the other one was he actually talks about covered calls and puts. And I thought that was really awesome, because I'm like, man, I'm such a big believer in that as a source of income every week, every month. Just like if I go out and I buy an apartment building, right? I don't have any apartment buildings, but of the rental incomes that we have, they generate so much money a month, and it's an asset because it covers the expense, and then after I pay, everything I have left over with some money. And the more of those you have, the more passive income that builds up. And if you have an earned income, meaning whether you own some type of business or you work for somebody earning X amount, they're in that enigma, that puzzle of, okay, I need to live off of this much money every month. This is my debt. This is what I have to pay to live. There's some things you can't avoid. Like you have to have water, right? Maybe food you could tone way down if you want to, but you definitely got to drink some water and you got to eat some food every month just to survive, right? You should have some shelter over your head of some kind. And in this day and age, you probably need some type of transportation, but depending on where you are, it's, what work looks like for you if you have a job, right? Then what your job is. Some people work from home remotely. There's certain things that you cannot avoid. You can't avoid paying them, right? And then there's the things that we take out, like a motorcycle or an expensive car payment or a trip. Like we said, I'm going to Vegas, and you spend $10,000 and you put it on a credit card. A friend of mine just went on a trip. It wasn't to Vegas, but he said he spent $8,000 and he put it on a credit card because he didn't have the cash. He put it on his credit card. Now he's going to pay it off. So, and he was saying that his spouse, his wife, wanted to do some remodeling work at the house, and he's like, we got to pay off this $8,000 debt, which is smart because as you keep piling up these debts, right? And that's another thing you could have. If you have a house, some people remortgage or refinance their house, you get a HELOC, and they use that extra cash not as an investment, but it becomes a liability because they remodel their kitchen for 40 grand or 80 grand, or they do some type of work at their house, which might bring up the value of the house, but it doesn't bring them any money. It just adds more debt because they have to pay off that debt with interest. So I think that the covered calls and the puts, where he basically says, if you want to buy 100 shares of Tesla, it doesn't say Tesla, I'm just using Tesla as an option, and you said, I'm willing to buy at 180 and it's 200, then basically you got to have the money stored up, built up, where you could afford 100 shares of whatever the company is. And in Tesla's example, I'm like, I'm willing to buy it at 180 if it goes to 180, and I would have buy it anyway if it goes to 180. And somebody says, they put up their contract, like, I'll sell it for 180, and there's a premium that they're willing to pay because they don't believe it's going to go to 180, and that premium might be, say, $100. So for that week, for the shares that you're willing to buy anyway, with the money that you have, you could collect $100, $50, $10, $1,000, whatever the number is for the premium, every week, every month, and that'll give you a percentage of your money. So if you just look at the percentage of your money for the premium you collect, of money you were going to spend anyway, or stocks you wanted to hold anyway, it's better than just sticking it in a savings account or a checking account that pays you basically nothing to store it there. So I really like that approach a lot if I was going to allocate some money to that. Because just like the apartment or the house or that we're renting, it generates so much money every month. The only difference is there's some tax benefits, and generally, I own the asset. I mean, I own the stock, but the asset, in this case the stock, it may go up in value, it may drop in value, right? But I own the stock, right? Unless there's a margin, like if I have a loan, so to speak, for the stock. But I own the stock. So if it goes up from 200 to 250, I can sell it or borrow against it at any point. And with the house, I own the house. The bank owns the house. So I have to make sure that I'm paying my mortgage, but the debt's going down. The house is hopefully, or the property is hopefully appreciating. So it's kind of a comparable option in your portfolio. So if you hold different things like real estate and stocks, which are companies, then you're kind of having a better shot of increasing your net worth. So these are all things that I never thought about in my 20s or 30s. And it wasn't until maybe late 30s, early 40s is really where things started to go, I'm going to start paying attention here. I'm getting older. And as I approach 50, which is in a few years, I think, wow, I need to really pay attention to the things I'm doing, because I don't have as much time as my oldest son, Mason, who is 21, for example. He has the probabilities of time, whatever downturns and things that happen over the next 20 years, and God willing, we're still here. I mean, there's a lot that's going to happen, whether I'm given those 20 years or not. Either way, if I am, I'm going to be in my late 60s if I'm that old. So I might not be as productive as if I was in my late 30s, right? Using my oldest son as an example. So I really like that option of selling puts, right? Meaning you have the capital where you can buy the shares of the company and you can collect a premium every week, every month. You can also sell covered calls, which I've said many, many times, where I own the shares anyway of whatever the company is, Tesla, and every week, every month, every year, however you do it, you can sell that premium saying, I own it for 200 and I'm willing to sell it for 250, and somebody's willing to pay me 100 a week, right, to borrow my share. So if it goes to 250, I'm still going to make all that upside from 200 to 250, or whatever the spread is, 300, 201, right? I'm going to make that upside, but I'm also going to keep the premium, all right? So if it doesn't fill, I keep the premium anyway, and regardless of where the stock rises and falls, the only downside of it falling is I own the stock for less, than I own it for. And the value of the stock is less than what I own it for. So that's the negative side. But if you're going to own it anyway, right, what difference does it make? It's going to eventually, most likely, come up if you pick the right companies. And if you're picking the right companies, like you was using Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, saying that they just buy companies of stuff they use, and that they buy stuff that they use. And I'm like, I like that. That's what I do. Like Gillette. And he had little things pop up that showed the different. He goes to Target and he goes to, all the different things that he used. Pretty basic, simple strategy. Just it's over time. But a lot of us want to, hit that lottery ticket. The biggest lottery ticket I ever won was with Dogecoin, and that was like hitting a lottery ticket. Like it jumped up for the little bit of tokens that I had bought, being totally oblivious to what it would do. But that is not a good strategy. That's just pure luck. And if you're relying on luck, you're probably not gonna it's probably not gonna work out for you. That I found, because people can spend a lifetime betting on luck and losing, versus the harder you work, the luckier I am. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying before. So anyway, that's my thought in the morning. I don't really have anything to get into. I just wanted to share that video. I'm going to link it below. And if you're thinking about passive income, this is kind of the saturation I'm trying to get into your head that's in mine, because I think it's a great strategy to have. And I know a lot of successful people personally. I mean, very, very successful. I'm talking, hundreds of millions of dollars that I know, and a lot of them have the same. Like, I'd love to sit down and at some point I got to figure out how to integrate like some interviews. I was joking with my boss, who's the CEO of the company, the other day, and he's like, "Oh no, I don't want to do that." He get all freaked out. But we were laughing about it. But he just not. But there are people that would like to share, right? They're not worried about if they say the wrong thing and there's going to be some type of implications. But that's how you learn. But a lot of the people that I know that are very successful, a lot of them have diversification. I mean, they have real estate that they have passive income from that's appreciating, that if they owe money on it, it's going down, where they own it outright, and it generates cash flow. Or they have debt, but there's still positive cash flow and it's appreciating and going down. I mean, it seems like that's what a lot of really wealthy people do. So it might be something we could replicate in our own life. And then these stock things that we're talking about, dividends. I'm not a dividend guy. I'm getting 20 minutes. So I don't do dividends, but certainly if you can make some extra money for stocks and get some dividends, why not? Why wouldn't you? And then same thing with owning the stocks. If you're going to buy companies where you're like, I like this company, this Google thing seems to be working out, right? And you're going to buy some shares of that. Why wouldn't you sell some puts or sell some covered calls if you have that money, and just do that? So again, not financial advice. It's just stuff that I'm doing. But, okay, I'm at 20 minutes here. I'll see you guys tomorrow. We'll talk about some stock stuff. I'll see you. Have a good Tuesday.